Viewers like you make this program possible. Support your local PBS station.
People are always asking us what happens to the food on this program. Well, this is it, our emaciated floor manager and the last of the flaming souffle, which we're doing next time on The French Chef.
The French Chef is made possible by a grant from Safeway stores.
This is a rum, macaroon, and orange souffle. We're going to bake it and set it afire. We're doing a flaming souffle today on The French Chef. Welcome to The French Chef. I'm Julia Child. We're doing a wonderful dessert souffle today. This one is rum, macaroons, and orange. And it's an unconventional souffle. Most conventional souffle cook in a deep dish like this. And our souffle is going to cook in a flat baking dish like this. And as a matter of fact, our souffle is unconventional from start to finish, as you'll see by the time this one comes out of the oven all puffed and brown. Now, as this is an orange souffle, we're going to start out with the orange flavoring. And the orange flavoring is going to come from orange skins. There are quite a few ways of getting the flavoring out of orange skins, and one way is to grate them, as I'm going to do today, and then mash them with some sugar. And when you have a grater, you can scrape it either, depends on what kind of a grater you have. This one has little holes with sort of little circles that pop up, which I like very much because it doesn't take too much of the orange rind off. Or it also has a side here with sort of little prickles on it, but I think that it's sort of hard to do, and this one seems to go much more easily. The thing is, with the orange skin, you want to make sure that you just get the orange part of the skin and not the white part of the skin. I've already, before we began, grated one orange in here, so you don't have to watch me grate two of them. And now, after you've grated the orange in, then you mash it with 1/3 cup of granulated sugar. This masher I got when we were in Germany once. I think it's fun when you're traveling around just to pick up any likely thing you see, because you never know when it's going to come in handy. And see, by mashing the granulated sugar in with the orange peel, we extract the orange flavor as much as possible, because the skin has oil in it, which we want to extract. And then we're going to have 6 egg yolks, which go in. And then we're going to mix the egg yolks and the sugar together. I'm going to get some water boiling here. And then gradually pour in 1/3 more cup of granulated sugar. Now, whenever you're mixing egg yolks and sugar, and so many desserts start out this way, you have to pour the sugar gradually into your egg yolks, because if you pour it in all at once, the egg yolks may turn granular. Sometimes if you're making a cooked sauce with egg yolks in it, you'll find that it has sort of granular specks in it. It may just be that you've beaten in the sugar too quickly. So if you just beat it in gradually like this, you're on the safe side. And then also, because these are going to be heated, you want to be sure to beat it up a little bit until the egg yolk mixture is pale and lemon colored. Now, these are large eggs, U.S. graded large. I always use one type of egg yolk, so then I always know exactly how much I'm going to have. So all of my recipes use large eggs. Now, that has become sort of thick and lemon colored and is forming the ribbon. You can do this in an electric mixer, but I don't see that it's worthwhile when it's so easy to do by hand. And then the rum flavoring, we're going to get 1/4 cup of rum. And if you don't want to use rum, you can use 1/4 cup of orange juice. And then that gets mixed up. And then here comes some more of the unconventional part. This is going to poach over simmering water. Because what a soufflé is, all it is a thick sauce into which you have incorporated stiffly beaten egg whites, and it doesn't make any difference what the thick sauce is. Sometimes it is a milk and flour base or white sauce. And this is just going to be pure egg yolks and sugar and rum. I will give you those proportions again in case you didn't get them written down. That's good. The grated rind of 2 oranges, which is mashed with 1/3 cup of sugar. And then you beat in 6 egg yolks. And then you gradually beat in 1/3 cup of sugar and beat until it is pale yellow. And then you beat in 1/4 cup of rum or orange juice. And then you beat it over this almost simmering water. It can be simmering, but you want to, this is just like making a custard sauce, in that you beat until the egg yolks have poached and thickened. It's almost, you could say, there's almost a little bit like scrambled eggs. But you want to be very careful whenever you're doing anything with egg yolks that you heat them very gradually, so that they just gradually turn into a cream. You can see now, this is water's boiling, so I'm going to take it off for a minute. You can beat this. It's a little bit safer to beat it in a glass or porcelain bowl, but it takes quite a bit longer. I tried this the other day, and it took me 8 minutes to get the eggs to thicken up. And with the stainless steel bowl, it takes us just about 2 or 3. But you have to watch it very carefully, because the stainless steel one heats up so fast that if you're not careful and your water's too hot, you will find that the yolks have begun to coagulate in the bottom of the bowl. Now, if you were making there's a very nice recipe for chocolate mousse, which starts out exactly this way, of beating egg yolks over water until they're thick. If you can see now, I'll take that out of the water for a moment. See, that's beginning to thicken up. So you just keep putting it on and off water, and then it doesn't take so long. Then there are quite a few things in cooking that do have exactly the same kind of a beginning. For instance, there's a Genoise cake, but that includes whole eggs rather than just egg yolks. Now, as you can see, that is really becoming a very thick cream there. And all that is just the eggs slowly poaching. Now I'll heat it up just a little bit more, and it's practically done. And another way you can tell when it's done is to stick your finger in. And if it's warm to your finger, that means that you're almost done. But the question is just to keep watching it and take it on and off heat. Now, when that is a nice thick cream like that, and it makes a little ribbon on the surface, you've then poached it enough, so now it's to be beaten until it's cool. And with this, it's very sensible to beat it in the electric mixer. This isn't the bowl that goes with a mixer, but it works anyway. And that's just to be beaten until it's cool. And while that's beating quietly away by itself, I shall go on to the rest of the flavoring. We have our macaroons. I have my big German masher again. And these are just regular macaroons, which I've just let sit out until they become stale. And if you have fresh macaroons, you can make them stale by just breaking them up and putting them in a 200-degree oven for about half an hour, or maybe even more, until they're stale and crumbly like these. And then just mash them up. You don't want them too finely mashed, so I didn't do them in the electric blender. you do them in the electric blender, it becomes a little bit of a too fine powder, and I want these to retain a little bit of their sort of big crumb state. You just mash them up with anything, or on a flat surface with a rolling pin would work perfectly well. Macaroons are used a great deal in French cooking. But be sure when you get them that you get a very good brand of them. Taste them, and if they taste well, then you know that they'll be good for cooking. And all macaroons are is almonds and egg white and sugar cooked. They're really quite easy to make. So now we're going to put this one in just a low baking dish. This one is about 10 inches in diameter and about 1.5 inches high. And you butter the mold and sugar it. If you don't like to get butter on your hands, you can always put the butter on with a piece of paper, but I think that's sort of a nuisance. And then it gets some sugar in it. This is just granulated sugar. And then you turn it around in the mold, and that allows the souffle to rise nicely, and it also gives it a nice little sugary bottom. In most or practically all soufflés, at least the French ones, you always butter the mold and then usually put sugar in for a sweet soufflé, and if you're using a cheese soufflé, you would put cheese in. Now I'm going to go back to the egg whites and see how they're doing. No, I mean to my egg yolks. So you can tell when this is done, when it's cool to your hands, and it takes about 5 minutes or so for it to cool off. And then it's a lovely thick cream, as you'll see in a few minutes. So that goes over here, and then I go back and we're going to do the egg whites. Now this, though I usually like to do egg whites by hand, I'm going to do them by machine this time, just to show that I really do not too much disapprove of a machine. And this is going to be 6 egg whites. And they go in and are beaten up until they just become a little bit foamy. Always when you're beating egg whites in a machine, start them out slowly until they begin to foam, and then you want to add a little bit of cream of tartar, and this is going to take a 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar after they become foamy, and also a little pinch of salt. Now the reason you put the cream of tartar in is because the cream of tartar acts as a stabilizer. You know that very often when you, usually as a matter of fact, if you beat egg whites in a conventional bowl like this, after you have beaten them, in about 2 or 3 minutes they begin to separate, and they lose that lovely velvety quality that they have when you first beaten them. And the cream of tartar stabilizes them so that they don't break down and turn watery. Then you beat them until they begin making, then they're nice and foamed up and almost turn into points. Those are soft points, so now we're going to put in some sugar. And this also firms them up. I'm going to put in 2 tablespoons of sugar and turn the beater on high. And they're done when they form peaks like that. And they're a beautifully velvety quality. So now they're done. Actually, I don't see that beating egg whites in a beater is any quicker than beating them by hand, but at least I've shown that I don't disapprove of the beater. And now we're going to have some cornstarch in our egg yolk mixture. And if you're going to use cornstarch, you have to measure it properly, because whether or not it's sifted, it has a different weight. So I measure cornstarch just as though it were flour. It's going to have 1/4 of a cup, so put the cup on a flat surface and sift the cornstarch directly in and then level it off. And if you do it that way, you always have just about the same amount. And that amount is just about 1 ounce. And even with that piece of paper, it always seems to, the cornstarch is so light that it always seems to fly all over everything. And then the cornstarch gets mixed into the egg yolk mixture. And this, you can make this souffle without the cornstarch, but the cornstarch makes the souffle stay up a little bit more. I could have actually have put the cornstarch in while the egg yolks were still in the mixer. So that just gets thoroughly mixed in, and then we incorporate the egg whites. And this is always the key to your souffle or to a cake that doesn't have anything else in it but eggs, in which you've very carefully beaten your egg whites. And you then stir a quarter of them in to lighten your mixture, whether this was a sauce or this just egg yolk mixture that we have. You want to be able to fold your egg whites easily in. And the only way you can fold them in is to lighten your first mixture first. And then the folding, as we have done before, but it's the key to using egg whites, is your rubber spatula, and you come down and around. And you're bringing a little bit of your heavy mixture up over your egg whites, because it's the egg whites really act like the air in a tire. It's the egg whites which keep the souffle up. And now I'll give those proportions again for the egg whites. Were 6 egg whites and 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar. And when the egg whites were almost forming peaks, you then beat in 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar. And the granulated sugar also helps to keep the egg whites up. Now see, with that folding, I'm coming down and then to the side and turning it. You noticed also when I put in the egg whites, there was that little tiny pinch of salt, and that is just to give them a little bit of flavor. Now, you don't want to overfold with this, and also when you've finished the almost folded, scrape off the one rubber spatula with the other so that you're not losing any of your mixture, because whatever is attached onto your spatula is fairly heavy. And now those are correctly incorporated. And this, remember this folding technique that you use also for your soufflés and also for cakes, in that you have to learn how to do the folding and do it very rapidly so that you keep the egg whites entirely up in their original puff. And now the soufflé is ready to be put into the dish. So we put about 1/3 of the soufflé mixture into the dish, and then sprinkle on some of the almonds. I've got probably about a cup of macaroons. I probably won't use them all, but that has a nice layer of the macaroons. And then we have another layer of soufflé. Then another layer of macaroons. And then the final amount of the soufflé. And that just gets spread around nicely on top. You don't end up with a layer of macaroons, you end up with powdered sugar. And then we have powdered sugar in a sieve, and that goes on top of the soufflé. And use a very finely meshed sieve and put on really quite a heavy layer of the powdered sugar. And the sugar hardly browns while the soufflé is cooking, and it makes a very nice effect on it. And now this souffle, as you saw in our opening scene, I had it covered with a big pot. So you can get a souffle ready, and then you can cover it with a pot, and it will stay perfectly all right for half an hour or even an hour. But you want to be sure that it is not in a draft, because it can catch cold and fall. But the important thing is with your egg whites, when you have put your cream of tartar in, which gives the stability to your egg whites, and you've also beaten in a little bit of sugar into them so that they're even more stable, you can get your souffle ready and then let it wait for an hour. And very often before you're going to start the souffle, say you have let it wait, well, up to a good hour, and you're a little bit worried about that it may have fallen down slightly, you can give it a little push just before you put it into the oven. You can put it on the burner and just get it just started a little bit. And so now I'm going to put it into the oven, and then we're going to start out on a sauce. And this is going to go into a 375-degree oven, and it's going to cook for about 25 minutes. Now we can take a look at this souffle that we put in at the beginning now. You see that's beginning to come up nicely. It'll come up a little bit more, and it needs about 5 minutes longer. So I'll just about have time to start in on a sauce with it. And this sauce I'm purposely doing because it's using the same principles as we already have been using. It is a custard sauce, crème anglaise, and I think this is one of the most ubiquitous dessert sauces in French cooking. And this is egg yolks and sugar and milk. And it's the basis for, we're going to do again the same thing of the beating in of the sugar gradually. I'm going to use about 1/3 of a cup of sugar and 3 egg yolks. Again, that goes in gradually. And again, and this is very important, be sure to beat it up until it becomes a little bit thick and lemon colored before you proceed to do anything. This is just cooking insurance. And then when it's thick and lemon colored, we have 1 1/4 cups of milk. And this gets very gradually beaten in, and this is hot milk. And again, you want to be very sure that you beat it in gradually because you don't want your egg yolks to curdle. This dessert could be called coddling the egg yolks, because you can make the egg yolk do what you want if you treat it the way it likes to be treated, which is rather slowly and gently. And now I'm going to set it over heat and just stir it with a wooden spoon until it gradually thickens. And you can, if you would like, you can put in a teaspoon of cornstarch along with this, which acts sort of as an anti-curdling insurance. Now I'll give you these proportions again. That was 3 egg yolks and 1/3 cup of granulated sugar gradually beaten in, and then beat the egg yolks and sugar until it is a pale yellow and thick, and then very gradually beat in 1 1/4 cups of hot milk, and then stir it over moderately high heat. Now you can, if you want to, stir this over simmering water, but it just takes so long, and you're perfectly safe stirring it over moderate heat if you just keep watching what you're doing all the time. And be sure when you're cooking anything with egg yolks in that you use a non-staining pan. This one is stainless steel, or use enamel, or you could use fireproof glass. But if you use a staining material, sometimes the sauce will turn sort of greenish. That, I don't know, there's often a chemical reaction. Now when this very gradually thickens up, it will just very lightly coat the spoon. You'll notice also there's a little bit of steam coming up. That means that the sauce is almost ready. But you just have to keep right on stirring, and you have to stir it long enough so that it really does thicken. And if you have a candy thermometer, if you have no cornstarch in, it would be thick at about 165. And with cornstarch, it's thick at around 170. But it's much better to rely on your own intuition and eye for this kind of thing. And really, and not to be scared of the egg yolk because it's going to curdle quickly. Because as you see, I'm sort of taking it on and putting it off heat. And then, when your sauce has thickened up enough so that it's coated the spoon, you then put in your flavoring. And the custard sauce always has a little bit of vanilla flavoring in. So I'm going to put in a teaspoon of vanilla. And then you can put in whatever other flavoring you would like. That you could put in melted chocolate if you were using it for ice cream, or you could put in rum. And as long as this is a rum and orange souffle, and we have had the rum already in the souffle, I'll put in some orange liqueur. I'll put in about a tablespoon of orange liqueur. And again, whenever you're using liqueurs and wines, if you don't have if you don't want to pay for a good brand, don't put in any at all. And then also, you put in about a half tablespoon of butter. And that sort of gives the sauce a slight enrichment. And this is a perfectly lovely sauce with many kinds of pudding, say a vanilla pudding, or it's also a perfectly good sauce with ice creams, and there are all kinds of things that you think of it when you don't want to serve something as rich as cream, but you still would like some nice kind of a sauce to go with something. Think of this custard sauce because it goes extremely well with so many things. And now you want to be sure that you've tasted it and it's just right. And if you want to serve this sauce cold, you just chill it. And if you want to serve it hot, be careful not to overheat it again. So here is our dessert souffle all ready to serve. Now here's our souffle, all puffed and brown and lovely, and I'm going to flame it with some hot rum. There. Be sure when you're flaming something that you have your liqueur hot or nothing will happen at all. And now, I'm going to serve it. This souffle will serve 6 to 8 people. And then it needs a little sauce, and that custard sauce we've made is just perfect with it. And then, if you want it to be very fancy, indeed, you could serve a little sweet champagne, or possibly a lovely white sauterne. And this also, one nice thing about this unconventional souffle is that it doesn't sink quite as fast as the classical and conventional souffle. It's that little bit of cornstarch in that keeps it up just a little bit more than usual. And if you have the souffle done just a little bit before you're ready to serve it, it'll stay warm in the oven with the door ajar. So now, here with the same ingredients we've used so often and the same techniques, we've come up with a new and exciting dessert. And that's what cooking is, theme and variations. That's all for today on The French Chef. This is Julia Child. Bon appétit.
Julia Child is co-author of the book Mastering the Art of French Cooking.